Kakani, over to you for our continual exploration of marine space. We
Sure.
can't wait to hear more about FathomNet.
Well, I'm going to do my best to actually come under time because I'd love to be able to answer any questions if there are any. But I'm going to talk about FathomVerse. It's been a project that's included a lot of individuals. I mean, Gautam Shah, Stephanie, as you mentioned, he's associated with Internet of Elephants. But Monterey Bay Aquarium is a partner, as well as Ayn Rand, which is a game design studio in the Netherlands. And I think you all are familiar with seeing, images or maps like this. This is just a map that pulls data from GBIF, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, and this shows all of the occurrence data that's present in this global database. I think this image was actually pulled from 2023. And Steph and I were actually at a conference very recently, or a workshop really recently, focused on biodiversity. And a lot of the conversation was focused on how we fill gaps in Africa or parts of Asia or in South America. And me, as a Marine person in that room, was screaming, like, there's also massive gaps in the ocean. We just don't have a lot of information about what's there, who's there, and that can be problematic. And, it's one thing to have a single occurrence data set, like an observation of something in one place at one time. But if we're serious about biological monitoring or biodiversity monitoring, we actually need to look at multiple observations at the same place with these animals over time. And if you kind of take a look at the subset of the data that lives in GBIF and other databases like OBIS, and try to kind of sample or sort the data so that you're just looking at places where we do have capacity for long-term biological observations in the ocean, you would get a plot like this. But I want to add that this particular plot focuses on and has found that about 7% of the ocean's surface area is covered by long-term biological observations. But I don't think I need to remind anyone here that the ocean is a volume comprising about 99% of the habitable volume on our planet. And then on top of that, anywhere from 30 to 60% of life in the ocean is undescribed or unknown to science. And so, we've got a lot of observational gaps. We clearly don't know everything about all the animals that live in the ocean. And we also have really big needs. The blue economies, this whole area that's going to be focusing and further expanding and exploiting into the ocean to generate resources, power, et cetera. And we're just not ready with baseline information to inform those best practices. So we need to solve this problem really quickly. So researchers all over the world are deploying all sorts of systems. I want to say not just researchers, but also enthusiasts, right? Scuba divers, drop cameras, these remotely operated vehicles and autonomous vehicles. All of these systems I'm showing you here carry a lot of imaging equipment, a lot of sensor data that gives us additional metadata about the observations that we're making. And when we do these biodiversity surveys or monitoring, there's a number of different modalities, right? Earlier we were talking about acoustics. There's also environmental DNA. But when we're using imaging to collect data, that the biggest challenge is to convert that visual data, right, to something that's valuable or useful or relates to occurrence, right? So that you can push that information to these big data aggregators like GBIF and OBIS. And so somehow we have to convert this visual data from showing different species of animals, right? The relationships between, let's say in this case, substrate, relationships between individual animals, counting them, making quantitative estimates of what the biological community looks like in these areas. It's very, very time consuming to do this. I don't think I need to tell anyone here about that, but in some cases it can take anywhere from 3 to 5 times as long to properly annotate this kind of footage as it takes for you to collect it. So the big bottleneck is processing this information. And so lots of different groups out there has focused on, how might we use artificial intelligence to, really fill these observation gaps or at least help process visual data. And so like very, very high level, I think the ways in which a lot of us have tackled this problem has been focused on what's going on in the middle. Visual data is coming into your pipeline. You will have humans somehow in the loop that are either training these models that are then generating predictions. But then really for these models to work really well, particularly in the ocean where, things are out of distribution, things change all the time. You need humans to continually be in that loop to improve the models, improve the outcomes, and get annotated data out. One of the things that we've really focused on is, injecting humans into this loop. And we've been thinking a lot about the human AI interfaces we need to interact with a wide-ranging audience. There are experts in the world who can look at an image and tell you precisely what that animal is, in some cases down to the species level. There's obviously a lot of computer vision experts. I saw Dan Morris, you're here. But how do we engage with that community to help us solve really challenging problems in computer vision? But then there's so there's not a lot of experts. There's a ton of enthusiasts, as a lot of us know here. People who might have taken a marine bio course or just is really into David Attenborough, like documentaries, right? And so how do you make connections between these groups to help us solve and address this human verification problem? And so we've done a lot of user-centered design work, a lot of interviews with individuals across sectors. And what we learned is there's no one size fits all solution. And so we've been building out infrastructure, software, data infrastructure, as well as human infrastructure to be able to do this. So the FathomNet database, I encourage you to check that out later. I don't have much time to talk about it. We also have the FathomNet portal, which will be launched next month. This is where people can upload their visual data and process it. But then what I'm really excited about more recently and what we just launched in May is FathomVerse, which is, I'll let you see it first. All right, so FathomVerse is a mobile phone app that really leans heavily into gamification to engage ocean lovers, animal lovers, and armchair explorers to help us address this kind of data deluge in the ocean. And so what FathomVerse does is it invites game players to help us validate AI proposals and improve, at least initially, classifications on imagery that's being collected. But over time, we're going to be adding and implementing new features that will allow game players to contribute to localizations, contribute to keywords and other descriptors. And it's really, I think, an exciting opportunity. It's also an exciting opportunity to aggregate a lot of different groups in the really fractured ocean community, because what we are basically looking at are the use of data contributions from a lot of different institutions like Schmidt Ocean Institute, NOAA's Office of Exploration Research, Ocean Networks Canada, Ocean Exploration Trust, and the idea that all of that data is being aggregated and evaluated and processed within the game thanks to these game players. And so I just wanted to share with you all some stats since we launched. We've had more than 12,000 users representing 133 different countries and have generated more than 5 million annotations. 22,000 images have reached consensus, and there's a lot of thought behind how do you generate community consensus. And then we have millions of images that are in our pipeline from our research partners. And so with that, right, the goal here, right, is to someday, it could be foundation models for life in the ocean. It could be something else, but really the hope is that we can inform activities that are happening in the ocean, try to prevent this tragedy of the commons that we're very familiar with in terrestrial spaces. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions if I have any time.
Yeah, you have plenty of time.
Okay.
Okay, Rob, I'm not going to throw to you. That was SAS. Um, Kakani, this is just such an incredible project, not just from the I loved hearing you talk about the vision behind the game and what you're hoping to build in terms of partnerships and in terms of a pipeline and with the ultimate goal of what is your ultimate goal? I don't know if I can throw it. Can I throw it to you?
Well, funnily enough, the goal I tell a lot of people, and it has to do with my background in aerospace engineering, is like for me, I'm just so enamored by this like search for life just in
Mm.
general. And I would love it if we were able to discover all the life in the ocean. Like that's not a small task, but I think if we can at least address, the data pipelines and the data infrastructure and the data sharing that's required to do something like that, then, we might get closer to that goal someday.
And like what strikes me is like when you talk data pipeline, data storage, like all of those things seem like the boring infrastructure side of the most important side of this work. But what you've got as your way of engaging people is this beautiful front end that like is accessible to citizen scientists, like everyone, to help with this giant challenge. I think it's just the coolest approach. Um, I'm just going to throw to uh, Alfie. Did you want to jump in and ask your question? I don't actually know if I said your name correctly at all.
No
Okay.
worries.
How
I'd
do I
be
say it?
shocked if you said my name correctly.
I was
Sorry.
on a
I,
good
I
run.
feel like this is my first time joining one of these, and I
Welcome.
just want to say it's been the best hour of time that I've spent. It's been fascinating. I work in oil and gas, and we collect a lot of offshore imagery. And at the moment, we don't do a whole lot of stuff with that from a biodiversity point of view. But we have been exploring, whether there are things that we could be doing with it. I'm wondering whether, contributing imagery to a project like this would be helpful to you.
I think so. It's nice meeting you. I've had conversations with a number of groups, particularly more recently with offshore wind developers who are interested in contributing data or participating in this kind of broader research and development collaborative program that we're trying to create here. So I'm happy to chat offline about some other ideas or other options. But I mean, I agree. Like, I think oftentimes when people talk about the ocean and ocean exploration, it's often through the lens of, oh, we don't know very much. We don't have a lot of data. But I think we'll be surprised at how much data we already have. We just haven't made it accessible.
Mhm. Okay, great. Yeah, I will reach out to you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Um, Kakani, I wonder who else would you love to hear from the most after this call?
Well, so I think the biggest challenge for something like this is engagement and like sustaining engagement. And I'm an engineer. I don't really know how to do that. But I've been working really closely with the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and they've been fantastic. But, I've also been told like in certain influencers and their following and whatever can also be really helpful for kickstarting projects like this one. So if I got an email from Jason Momoa, I will not delete it.
Okay, I'm not
But you know
sure
what
if
I mean? Like kind of that
yeah, I'm not sure
level.
if we have that quite that reach, but maybe we do. I don't know.
No, but I
Um,
think like I think this community, right? Like
yeah.
we're all really connected. And I think one of the challenges we have often is we're all working in disparate areas on disparate topics, and it makes it really hard to come up with like a community or communication strategy that's really united and focused. And I think that's one of the things we're trying to do with FathomVerse is to try and unite all these different voices around the goal of being able to understand ocean life. So
So when you say engagement, do you mean like the community of gamers, or do you mean the community of data sharers who are participating on the other side?
yeah, it's going to be all of the above, but in the context of FathomVerse, it's the gamers themselves.
Okay. Okay. Okay, we have some ideas coming through the chat. I'm going to just wrap, because we're on the hour, I'm going to wrap us up here for the recording purposes. Thank you to everyone, for all of our wonderful speakers, for joining us today, and big thanks to Alex as well, who pulled this all together and ran our Tech for Wildlife Photo Challenge, which actually surfaced a lot of these projects. And good luck, Esther, and everyone else. We will see you here next month. Well, actually next week for virtual meetups, but next month for Variety Hour. All right, see you later, everyone.